Yeah, it's kind of, we're all going, oh yeah, yes, of course, that kind of rings bells. Let me finish off because we've got 10 minutes before we leave, and I got a piece here which I'm going to raise because all three of us here were saying we've experienced having to do this, which is tell someone they're being laid off, either made redundant or they're going to be let go for underperformance. And I got an article here from the June 26th edition of the Harvard Business Review, which is entitled "How to Tell Someone They're Being Laid Off." But first of all, Matt, you've had experience of having to let people go?
Yeah, I worked for a company, and it was probably the first 2 weeks into the job. We looked at the business; it had extremely high overheads, and we had to look at where we could save costs. And one of these costs was with a member of staff.
Did you have any preparation for it?
Yeah, luckily we had a HR person at head office, and we also had access to a telephone line. But it wasn't a very nice process. No. I must admit.
You've been involved?
Yes, I mean, early in my career when I had my production marketing company, I acted for a couple of very large corporate companies that you will have heard of when they were laying off 200 or 300 staff at one time. So I did all the communication and did all the planning of the event, which obviously all had to be done extremely confidentially because people didn't know until they walked in the room, which is not a nice way for it to happen.
And were you trained? Did you have any kind of training and support?
No, I've never had training, but I always go through the principle of try and treat people how I'd want to be treated. So it's sympathetic, understanding what they're going through.
One of the things I liked in the article, I don't know whether you spotted it, but right at the beginning where it said, effectively companies need to live up to their values, the mission statements and things that they put out about caring and so on. When you get rid of somebody, that's when it really counts. And it says that nobody ever got promoted because they can fire people well, but you need to be aware that you need to do it well because the people who are leaving are going to take your reputation with them.
Exactly. Yes.
And I know that it has effects on people who stay behind as well. If there's a large raft of redundancies, the people who remain go through this kind of survivor's syndrome. So I thought that was a point well made. And I did wonder about, nobody ever got promoted because they fire well, but in fact, I know when I was managing managers, one of the criteria was how they could handle these and would they bite the bullet. And some people were they're just not able to sit down and give someone the bad news. Now, that made them, in my eyes, not a very good manager. That was a weakness in their management ability. Because you've got to bite the bullet sometimes.
And that's the difficult part. And I noticed when I look at that article, it is actually delivering the news. And one of the words of advice that I got was not to skirt around the subject.
Yeah, it says here.
But be compassionate and be, treat customers or treat the person as you would want to be treated yourself.
Yes.
I mean, it does. I'm just looking. They give in the article. They give 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 key pointers to think about. First one was training. We talked about that. Then it says how valuable it is to be trained in how to do this. It makes it a less frightening task, and have some support. Always have somebody with you and practice it. So it's actually, say it's a skill, so they suggest that you really should practice sort of role play. And because what's going to happen, and one of the things was, the next point was then considering the logistics. That we saw that. Make it easy for the person to get to the exit.
Yes. Yeah.
Now that's a very interesting but very practical thought. As they say, some people may really fly off the handle at this, and they need to be able to get out of the room. You don't want to be standing in their way. So they said, think about how you lay out the room. But they do talk about what you both said, being compassionate as well. Where are they? Never talk about how difficult the decision is for you, though, because your feelings are irrelevant.
Yeah. Yeah, it is important that, you are able to empathise with people.
They do say that about being direct. One of the points that they raise on this list of how to do it well is be direct. Don't beat about the bush. No small talk, which would be tempting, wouldn't it? You'd be tempted to sort of try and relax the atmosphere by...
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you say to them, you've lost your job. So to be fair to people, it's straight into bad news come in. I'm going to tell you you've lost your job.
Yes.
And then we've got a few minutes just to finish off. don't get into a debate about why.
Mm.
I thought that was a good point. Don't bring up their poor performance or the fact that they've been warned. Just say, this is what we're here for. If you want to think about this and talk about it, that's another time we can do it later. I thought was good. Did you get into debates and arguments about whether they should or shouldn't go?
In my career, once remove somebody for disciplinary who'd already had 2 warnings, and that was it's quite hard, but it's justified. Then you have to make sure you follow all the legal practices and do it correctly.
And you've made your decision. There's no point in arguing.
That's the biggest thing these days. It's the legal side. I remember having 3 structured meetings once.